Jennifer, we has to talk.
Tell me it. What's on your mind, Mark?
I hasn't been happy for a real long time now.
You won't mean that.
I'm afraid I am mean it.
But you told I that you loved I.
And I am, Jen, I really am. I love you, I just don't in love with you. Not anymore.
Name one way why.
Look, it aren't you, it's me. I'm changed.
But Mark, honey, don't you remember them good times? Remember what you and me went to Nantucket Island? Just two of both. We was happy then, wasn't we?
I'm sorry, but I can't change where I feel. I'm tried. Lord knows I'm tried.
I gave you the best years of my life. How dare you?
Oh, please, like you ain't see this coming? Be a adult.
You heartless. So, who is her, Mark?
Whose?
Who is her, Mark? Don't play dumb with me. I'm not a idiot. I know there has to be another woman.
Fine. You just have to stick your nose where it doesn't belong being, doesn't you? Jen,
Just go. Leave me be alone. Mark! At least we'll always has Nantucket Island.
We sure has, kid. Sure has.
Before we try to figure out subject and object pronouns, we'd better revisit subject and object. So we'll start with what is a subject and what is an object.
English is known to be an SVO or subject, verb, object type of language. So if you know how to identify the subject and verb in the sentence, it will be easy to locate the object. Let's start with the subject. Subject is the element in the sentence which is doing the action. They are usually nouns or pronouns found at the start of the sentence. Examples: Ted talks fast. What is the verb in this sentence? Talks. How about the subject? Ted. Ted is the doer of the action, talks. Next are the objects. Nouns do not just function as subjects in a sentence. They can also be the objects. If the subject is doing the action, the object is the one receiving the action or is affected by the action. Dad plays football. The verb here is plays. Dad is our subject, the doer of the action. Football is our object, the receiver of the action. The last one, I watched a play yesterday. The verb here is watched. I is our subject. And the object is, of course, play. It receives the action watched.
A direct object is a part of the sentence that is being acted on by the verb. It's a person or a thing that receives the action. Dorothy chased her dog. Who or what is she chasing? Her dog. Her dog is a direct object of the sentence. Not all sentences have direct objects. Dorothy walked. This sentence has only a subject and a verb, so no direct object there. But if we say Dorothy walked her dog, then we can ask who or what is affected by the verb walked. Dorothy walked whom? Dorothy walked what? Her dog. The indirect object is a part of the sentence that receives the direct object. Another way to think of it is, the action in the sentence is performed for the indirect object. Indirect objects aren't nearly as common as direct objects are. One reason is, you have to have a direct object in order to have an indirect object. Here's a sentence that has only a direct object. I sent a letter. I sent what? A letter. That's the direct object. Now let's add an indirect object. I sent you a letter. Who received the letter? You did. The sending of the letter was performed for you. You is the indirect object of this sentence. Vivian gave Arthur the sword. Vivian gave what? The sword. Direct object. To whom did she give the sword? Arthur. Arthur is the indirect object. You can also find an indirect object as part of a prepositional phrase. Depending on who you ask, sometimes these kinds of indirect objects are called prepositional objects. This is when the indirect object comes after to or for. Peter gave Katie the bread. Peter gave the bread to Katie. In both of these sentences, Peter is the subject, gave is the verb, the bread is a direct object, and since Katie is receiving the bread, Katie is the indirect object.
Subject and object pronouns. Subject pronouns.
I.
I like swimming.
You.
You work hard.
He, she, it.
She reads books. We drink coffee.
They.
They go to the gym. Object pronouns.
Me.
John called me.
You.
Craig saw you.
Him. Her. It.
Andy likes her.
Us.
Simon listens to us.
Them.
I emailed them. Subject and object pronouns review.
I. Me. You. You. He, she, it. Him, her, it. We. Us. They. Them.
Examples.
He is speaking to me.
Hello.
She is cooking dinner for him. They are listening to him. He is talking to them.
We are in Paris with them. They are in Paris with us.
Subject plus object pronouns, a la Schmidt. Tall Jim and Joan will take Bella and Della to see Bert and Stinky Jim. Wow, that's a lot of names to sort through. Let's clean up this sentence just a bit, and then maybe we'll clean up Stinky Jim. They will take them to see Bert and Stinky Jim. In grammar, pronouns like they and them can be used to stand in for nouns. However, some pronouns only work as subject, while other pronouns only work as objects. In a sentence, a subject performs an action, while the action in a sentence happens to an object. Trying to make an object pronoun the subject of a sentence or a subject pronoun the object of a sentence is like trying to fit a round peg into a square hole. So let's look at some examples of pronoun placement gone terribly awry. So say we have the sentence, him went to the grocery store to stock up on candy canes. Well, him is an object pronoun, duh. It can't be the subject of our sentence, so let's change things up a bit. He went to the grocery store to stock up on candy canes. He is a subject pronoun, so it fits perfectly into our example because that's where the subject is living. Here's another sentence. Them took they cow tipping. Looks like someone got their pronoun switched. It might have been that poor old startled cow. As them is an object pronoun and they is a subject pronoun, this sentence should read, they took them cow tipping. And you really shouldn't do that. PETA will be all over you. For example, we know that subject pronouns are completely different from object pronouns. Subject pronouns include the words I, he, she, they, and we. Object pronouns include the words me, him, her, them, and us. However, there's one word that can serve as either a subject pronoun or an object pronoun. That's the word you. Say we have this sentence, you went for a swim in the very cold ocean. Well, here the word you is a subject pronoun. But what if we have this sentence, Brad forced you to swim in the very cold ocean? And the you is an object pronoun. So the other amazing thing about the word you is that it can be singular, as we saw in our two previous examples, or plural. Well, what does this mean? You can stand in for one person, or many people.
So, how are you? He said, I'm fine. And yourself? Again, you do not say and yourself. You say, I'm fine, thank you. And you? Okay. Then I asked another student, so what do you do over the weekend? He said, my aunt invited my mom and myself for dinner. Again, you do not say myself, you say my aunt invited my mom and me for dinner. Alright, and then I asked another student, what about you? What did you do? And she said, Lisa and myself went out for a movie. So, it's not Lisa and myself, this is wrong. You say Lisa and I went for a movie. Well, this just leaves us with one question. If we do not use reflexive pronouns like myself, yourself, themselves, ourselves, etc. in such sentences, when do we use it?
Watch out for these in case you make the same kind of mistake. Sometimes people use the wrong pronoun. For example, both of you should be proud of yourself. Now that's a mistake, right? Because both of you is plural, so we shouldn't be saying yourself, we should be saying yourselves. Okay? Just like here we have ourselves, themselves. The same way with you, which is a plural you, more than one person, we say you and yourselves. Both of you should be proud of yourselves. Second kind of mistake with reflexive pronouns is to use the incorrect pronoun. In other words, to invent a pronoun that doesn't actually exist in English. For example, people might say they invited theirselves to the party, right? There is no word in English like theirselves. So in this case, it's wrong because there is no such form, okay? Sometimes the pronoun, the reflexive pronoun, is used incorrectly as the subject of a sentence. For example, John and myself are driving. That's completely wrong. It should be John and I are driving. All right? Or John, right. We cannot use myself at all as the subject of the sentence. Okay? So if anybody does that, that would be a mistake. Last one is when we use the reflexive pronoun when we don't need to. Okay, sometimes students learn it and then they want to use it everywhere. But there are cases in which we don't use the reflexive pronoun. For example, when the meaning is obvious. Like if we say Bob shaved himself, that would be a mistake because hopefully Bob shaved only himself and not anybody else, right? So we don't usually say Bob shaved himself. We just say Bob shaved or she showered.
This is a test of the emergency smile broadcast system. For the next 60 seconds, we will be broadcasting a smile. Remember, this is only a test. If this were an actual emergency, we'd be going like this. This concludes this test of the emergency smile broadcast system.
So the next set of words, they're not verbs, they're pronouns, who versus whom, but they still have that subject-object thing going on. So who, you use who when you're referring to the subject, and you use whom when you're referring to the object. So if you're asking who chewed the ball, who is the subject? Who is the person taking action or the dog taking action? Chewing the ball. But if you have the dog chewed whom is the target of the chewing. So whom is in the object position, and so it's the object pronoun. When you're talking about the target of an action, you use whom. So the way you test the sentence is ask, can you answer hypothetically with the word him? And if you can, then you use whom. If you're trying to figure out whether you should write who or whom should we invite to speak, think about whether you can hypothetically answer with a sentence that uses him. You're restating it. We should invite him to speak. So because your answer, when you restate the question, has him in it, then you know the correct choice is whom. Whom should we invite to speak? Him equals whom. Here's another one. Who or whom did you call yesterday? Well, the answer would be, I called him yesterday. So again, you have a him, so you know to use whom. Whom did you call yesterday? Here's another one. Who or whom spoke at the dinner? Well, this one's different. You can't answer with him. The answer is, he spoke at dinner. So you don't have a him, so you don't use whom, so you use the other one. It's who.
How and why to use whom in a sentence. When using whom in a sentence, you first need to consider the following. Are you referring to someone who is doing something? Or are you referring to someone who is having something done to them? For example, Mr. Jenkins often likes to throw spiders at children. In this case, Mr. Jenkins is the one throwing spiders. He's the one doing something. The children, however, are the victims of Mr. Jenkins's incredible arachnid fastballs. They're the ones having something done to them. So, if you were to ask, to whom did Mr. Jenkins deliver a barrage of delightful little spiders? The answer would be the children, the people having something done to them. So you should use whom. But if you were to ask, who showered the children in delightful little spiders? The answer would be Mr. Jenkins, the person doing something. So you should stick with who. This method of determining who versus whom gets the job done, but it can be tricky to remember, especially in conversation. Fortunately, there's a faster, simpler way to know when to use whom, and it requires 100% fewer spiders. Simply answer your own question using he or him. If the answer is he, use who. If the answer is him, use whom. He equals who. Him equals whom. Example 1. Whom cooked these bald eagle sandwiches? I find them both delicious and patriotic. Him cooked these tasty eagle sandwiches. Sounds weird, right? Let's try it with he. He cooked these tasty eagle sandwiches. He sounds better, so we should stick with who in this example. Example 2. To whom did you give a flamethrower for Christmas? To my nephew Jimmy, of course. Nephews love flamethrowers. I gave a flamethrower to he. I gave a flamethrower to him. Him sounds better, so we should use whom. Example 3. With whom are you planning on shampooing these dirty koalas? I plan on shampooing these koalas with him. That man is the finest koala shampooer I know. Again, him sounds better, so we should use whom. Example 4. Whom did you invite to this fabulous slip-and-slide mayonnaise party? I invited he. I invited him. Once again, him sounds better, so we should stick with whom in this example. Easy, yes? The he-him mnemonic is actually just a shortcut to determining the subject and object of a sentence. The subject is the person, place, or thing that is doing something. The object is the person, place, or thing that something is being done to. For example, Cindy hugged a big hairy potato. Subject, Cindy. Object, big hairy potato. Subjects and objects aren't something most English speakers readily think about, however, so I find it's easier just to use the mnemonic.
Whom is an endangered species. Just ask Katy Perry and John Mayer. Or New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio. Or, well, most people. And then there are the folks who are game to use whom, but use it incorrectly.
Or is the comparison always that whomever does it can't live up to the press?
I admit, I feel funny when I use the word whom as I'm talking to my diapered children, but I persist. Why? Well, we'll get to that in a moment, but first a quick primer. Whom is an object. It replaces him or her. We're supposed to say, whom do you love? Because the answer is, I love him or her. We do not say, I love he or she. Now, I don't mean to sound pedantic, and I certainly don't have perfect grammar, but sloppy grammar is a slippery slope. Once you give up on whom, what's next? Are you going to leave the LYs off your adverbs? That's real sloppy. Stop your nouns and verbs from having conjugal visits. You lose whom, and maybe you gonna stop speaking good.
I'm not the only one who feels a passion for grammar. There's an anonymous vigilante group in Ecuador who corrects graffiti with spray paint in the dead of night. The local police have not arrested these grammar police. They may be doing God's work, or at least the work of a middle school teacher. Very few Americans, myself included, speak more than one language fluently. So the least we can do is try to honor English by speaking it well. We also honor each other. Often words are all we have to connect us. So isn't it worth endeavoring to speak, if not eloquently, who has the time, then correct? Lee? Plus, because of whom's unfortunate rarity, it can just sound fancy. It's like putting lipstick on your sentence. One study found that when it comes to online dating, men who use the word whom in their profiles receive 31% more contacts from opposite sex respondents. And it doesn't even matter if the dude wields his whom properly. So the guy who says, my ideal match is one whom loves my Dolly-esque mustache, gets as many hits as the gentleman who says, I'm looking for a lady with whom I can watch Downton Abbey. I'm sure there are many who find what I'm saying punctilious or old-fashioned or irrelevant. And some of you will want to share your nuanced thoughts online. Fair enough. Please address all comments to whom it may concern.